Now we got it. She's gonna give us a heart attack.
Shows packaged on Spotify, then the interviews are stripped down individually and they're packaged on Spotify. So I'm just not sure how to get you that exact listenership, but that is a BizNews radio channel on Spotify.
Sometimes big. This daily market report is made just for you by BrightRock, the first ever needs-based life insurance that changes as your life changes. This market report was made just for you by BrightRock, the first ever needs-based life insurance that changes as your life changes.
Okay. That's good. Really good.
BrightRock believes that with this market report was made just for you by BrightRock, the first ever needs-meshed life insurance that changes as your life changes. President Jacob Zuma the pool of stocks available for investment has been steadily shrinking over the past decade, with companies complaining about red tape, costs, and illiquidity.
Okay. Oh, good. Fine.
Don't even think of it. No stress whatsoever. Okay, so oh boy. There we go, Stu.
To make my appearance on the.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know.
I got my one mate said, I saw you the other day on your radio show. I was watching it from my head.
Well, it's yeah. 22,100 subscribers.
Yeah. Slowly down.
It's slowly down. Okay. Okay, let me just turn everything off.
So what about Magnus?
Magnus. Doesn't matter really. Okay. That's fine. Thanks, Stu.
And on the road, if you need Friedland, it's on the second page.
Sorry.
The Friedland clip.
I was on the second page. Okay. I don't know how to get there, by the way. Just to make it funny. When I'm recording, yeah, when you're recording, watch this. Okay, now we're recording. Now get this. There we go. Oh, of course, much better. Okay, all right. User error. Oh, jeez. Okay, it's going on quickly. 24. Okay, I see that 7 people here on YouTube. The idea on YouTube is we got it there so that you can pose questions to our guests. So really do that. Take advantage of the opportunity. And we've got some really cool stuff coming up tonight. Magnus, of course, Magnus Heystek. He's independent. He speaks his mind. He'll be doing that again tonight. You can be sure of it. And then we've got one of the highest rated miners. Sorry, while I go away here. Just got it. That's right. There. Okay. My computer screen wasn't so good. Okay, but one of the highest rated miners in South Africa, Andries from Heerden, he'll also be talking to us. Now, what I have to do before the show is make absolutely certain that I've got all these guys on my contact list. Otherwise, if something happens and they don't come through our virtual studio, which you can see me in right now, then we've got a problem because I'll then have to start looking for their phone numbers. So that's the story. I'll just enter those numbers here and I'll be talking to you in literally 5 minutes. Wow. But post your questions, very easy, just type them on the side there. Right. All done on that one. Okay, so I'm just not ready to go. If you haven't tried it yet, there's Andries. It's interesting when the mouse goes missing. Hello, Andries. Good to see you, man. Okay, I'm not hearing you yet. So, yeah, I'm not hearing you. How's it, Magnus? Andries, can you hear me yet? Yeah, you're on mute on your side, Andries. Just look at this here. Okay, it's definitely not on this side. Magnus, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Alec. I can't see you. Can you see me and hear me?
I can't see you, or I can hear you. So that's
okay. That's fine. Maybe better. Maybe better that way. You're quite faint, Alec, or so,
wait a minute. Okay, thank you for letting me know. I've got a funny feeling. All right, let's go in here. Okay, settings. I'm just going to make doubly sure. Default. Aha. Okay, horrible thing. Okay, I know what it's done here. It's been very naughty. We'll just. How's that, Magnus? Can you hear me now?
it's about the same, Alec.
Okay. Better. How's that? Any better?
Oh, no, that's perfect. There was something that you did now.
Yeah, no. There was a ish. Let me just quickly
Alec, can you hear me now?
Andries, I got you 100%. Perfect. We ready to go? Yeah, everything fine. No, all working well. All good. Okay. Andries, that's great. Got you. Magnus, we can't see you yet, but that's not the end of the world. Okay, guys, stand by. We're going to connect now with FMR.
Stand by. Business Power Hour starts in 25 seconds.
Alec, can you hear me?
Fifteen seconds. 10 seconds.
The BizNews Power Hour.
Welcome to the BizNews Power Hour, where we give you the rational perspective on business news that matters. Indeed we do, and it's a warm welcome to you here from Alec Hogg. Well, looking at the markets internationally, they are pretty flat today. Nothing much going on in Wall Street, where the Nasdaq is the strongest of what's happening there, about 0.5% up. The Dow and S&P are flat. As far as South Africa is concerned, well, here at home, the indices, the JSE indices, also not a whole lot to write home about. Top 40 was flat on the day. Industrials up about 0.5%, resources down about 1%. And in tonight's show, we've got one of South Africa's most respected miners, entrepreneur der Duisend, as they would say in the Northern Cape, where he's recently done another great acquisition, or so it appears to be. Andries van Heerden is the chief executive of Afrimat. I can see you in the virtual studio, Andries. Whereabouts exactly are you? I know you're at home, but where might that be?
Alec, can you hear me clearly, Alec?
Got you now, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Alec, I'm in my home in Cape Town. You wouldn't believe it, but my wife was tested positive for COVID this morning, so I had to rush home, and we're in a sudden lockdown. So fortunately, it doesn't look too serious, though. But it's so I'm in Cape Town. Short answer.
Wow, that's a bit of breaking news there for the Van Heerden clan. I'm hope that everybody that you know picks this up, and all the very best to your wife and to you in this period. But I guess the chances are that somewhere along the line, you're either going to get a vaccination or you're going to get COVID. So as long as one's healthy, and you look pretty healthy. So
thank you.
That sounds good. We're going to be talking in a moment about the acquisition that you did, and a little bit more about Afrimat itself. But tonight's guest co-host is Magnus Heystek. Magnus, as always, on a Wednesday, lovely to have you with us. Do you know much about Andries and Afrimat?
Yes, I've been following Andries and Afrimat. A very nice story there, and I'll be very keen to hear what he's been up to. So I'm getting the news firsthand, as they say. Alec, thank you.
We always do on this program. And, well, we also, coming up tonight, have got a really fascinating story. I was sent a video on a guy who I interviewed a while ago called Willem Petzer. Now, Willem is an activist. He's a farmer. He had pretty difficult time in his family, so he decided to do something about what he saw are the difficulties in South Africa. And he has been speaking out for his community. And over the last week, he published a video. Now, Willem is a little bit of a celebrity when it comes to YouTube. If you look him up or Google him, you'll see that his videos are pretty well watched. The one that he wrote about here is on a tax or an anti-tax plan. It's got a gripping headline, Magnus, that you'll just love. How do you stop the ANC from stealing your tax money? and what he's saying is you take your money and you put it into trust and you put it into this organization that he has put together. And well, we'll be talking about that in some detail as we have Willem on the second half of our program. Ahead of that, tonight we'll also be touching on cryptocurrencies. Now, I know, Magnus, you've been quite outspoken about crypto and the dangers that exist there. But my goodness, if you'd been whipsawed or caught up in crypto in the last week, it could have changed your address, not in a good way.
Yes, indeed. Just about Willem Petzer, I retweeted your tweet about Willem, and it's loved by 289 of my followers, and I'm sure many of your followers. So there's a rage building up amongst South Africans about tax and the way our taxes are being spent, and the whole situation. So yes, that tweet of yours went absolutely viral, Alec, and I've even been approached by Willem for further comments. So yeah, that was a great tweet, and I watched the video, and people just love it. So well done, Alec.
He's making a lot of sense, isn't he, Magnus? I mean, obviously, we can all make up our own minds after we speak with Willem later in the program, but a lot of what he's saying, it's tapping into things that many other South Africans are maybe too scared to say.
Indeed. Perhaps, he's starting out in life and attacking some of the things that we feel powerless about. And, many people over the years have said, when is there going to be a tax revolt? Now, we can't all stop paying our taxes. You'll have law enforcement. But we need to express our anger, and I think the road that he is suggesting is perhaps a smart one. Do it through the courts. Keep them very busy in court so they can explain how they're spending or not spending our money and where there's theft. What are they doing in terms of the constitutional rights, etc. So I think he's going to get a lot of support for his campaign.
Well, he's looking for 1.5 million signatories, and that's big stuff. But, we'll be talking to him just after 6 o'clock. You're listening to the BizNews Power Hour, brought to you by the team at biznews.com. But first up is Andries van Heerden. Well, Andries, it's not an exaggeration to say that you are alongside Neil Froneman, the most respected miner in South Africa at the moment, and Neil's mostly offshore, so that means you're in a group of one. Afrimat's been an incredible story. When you started, or maybe give us rather than me stealing your thunder, how did it all come about? What was first a materials handling company? How did you decide to start Afrimat?
Alex, it's a long story. I joined the industry 20 years ago in a little quarrying company called Prima Klipbrekers in Worcester. And in 2003, we saw a major change in the industry with a lot of legislation and BEE and all those things. And I came up with the idea of consolidating the industry. And initially, we ran with the idea, and then my shareholders at the time, my bosses got very nervous about this really crazy idea. And they got advice from a very clever lawyer that told them rather fire the guy and carry on with your lives, which they then did. They fired me in 2005. And I then went and I bought, together with partners, we bought a little company called Lancaster Quarries in KZN. Fantastic little business. And I moved to Frey 8 in KZN. And John Wern of WG Wern then listed his quarrying business and proved to my ex-colleagues that the idea is not so stupid. And then and I'm cutting a lot of detail out now, we got together again. It was a bit difficult for me emotionally, but eventually we got over it. We got together and we merged the two companies, Lancaster and Prima, in 2006, and listed it under the name Afrimat. It came from African Materials. And since then, we've been acquiring a couple of quarrying businesses, doing the consolidation that we planned initially. It worked extremely well. And then the 2008 crisis hit, and we got a little nervous about the construction sector. And we decided that we could use our skills elsewhere, and we went on and we bought a few industrial minerals businesses, the first of which was a mine called Glen Douglas that belonged to Exaro. And that's where you came in, Alec, because in 2012, you actually chose Afrimat as your share early in January. And that really kickstarted our share price, because our share price was really taking a hammering up until that point. You can actually see on the graph that on what night you chose it. And there our share price changed its direction, and it's been on an upward curve. Our share price was trading, if I can remember correctly, around about 2 Rand at the time, and tonight it closed at 50. So it was an interesting choice of yours. I think you helped us a lot there at that stage. But
I tell you what, Andries, I should have mortgaged my house and followed their own recommendation. But congratulations on adding so much value for shareholders. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So we bought a few limestone and dolomite mines since then, and we've specialized in trying to find those assets that had huge potential and were not fully, not reaching their potential at the time. So we did a few acquisitions like that, and then in 2016 we bought an iron ore mine in the Northern Cape. At the time, the iron ore price was $55 and the Rand was trading at 12 Rand. And even Anglo-American thought that iron ore was dead at the time. And we were very fortunate. The things worked well for us. And since then, we've acquired a few more iron ore reserves in the Northern Cape. We've bulked that up. We recently also bought an anthracite mine in Mpumalanga that was also in deep distress, and we're busy with the turnaround of that. And now announced that hopefully a year from now we'll be able to start mining manganese.
It's a wonderful story, but do you remember Vryheid? It's my part of the world, in Noord-Natal.
Yeah, I still go there very often. I actually spent a few days there just 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Well, we growing up, Newcastle was always a Vryheid High School, and then the soccer team from Vryheid were pretty useful, would you believe? And we used to play against them as well. So a very warm place in many people's hearts. Andries, before we talk about the manganese mine that you've acquired in the Northern Cape, because it's a whole story on its own. You also walked away from a deal in Australia. And I'd love to get your insight on that. Many South Africans would give their left arm to have an acquisition of an offshore company or a foreign company. And there you had it on a plate, but you decided not to do the deal.
Alec, it actually wasn't an Australian company. It was listed in Oz, but it was South African coal assets. It's a good business, and the CEO that I had at the time, I actually really respected him. I think is a very, very good guy. But given the realities of the mine, we would run into a cash flow pit just about 6 months after the acquisition, because they would get to the end of life in one of the mines and spend capital to open up a new mine. So it was just it was a relatively easy decision, because after spending, and at that time it would have been 50% of our market cap that we would have spent on an acquisition, and then just 6 months later to spend another 30% of your market cap and cash to open up a mine, the sums just didn't work. So it was a relatively easy sum, but there was nothing wrong with the business. It's just that for us, the sums just didn't work.
And would you have kept the Aussie listing had you done the deal?
Probably not. No, we would probably have. It was a very complex structure. With it was actually a company. If I can remember correctly, the holding company was actually registered in the UK, but listed in Australia and operating in South Africa. Was very, very complicated. And I always say tongue in cheek, I grew up on the West Rand. I don't understand these complicated structures. I try to keep it simple.
Warren Buffett says the same thing. If you can't understand it, or it doesn't make sense in words of one syllable, then stay away. Manganese makes a lot of sense, though, particularly South Africa being a huge producer of manganese. This deal that you did last week, it's got a history of its own. The Chinese, until you've come along, owned it. They then had a boxing match with the Minister of or the DME Minister. It really has got a bit of a track record of being caught up in the courts. I think it took 8 years, didn't it, before they were able to get to the point that we're at now. So how good is this deposit if they were prepared to fight it all the way up to the Constitutional Court, which you have now acquired here for all around about 700 million rand?
Yeah. The reserve is one of the last remaining really large reserves in the Kalahari manganese field. It is a relatively shallow reserve. We can mine it open pit for the first 10 to 15 years. I think probably 15 years at least that we can mine open pit. And it's a really good quality. It's 39% plus manganese, which is a very good quality for manganese.
What is low quality?
Very low.
For context,
Sorry?
what would low quality manganese be if 39% is good?
I'm a little out of my depth here to know exactly where the limits are. I'm not exactly sure about that. Sorry.
Okay, but significantly lower than 39%, presumably.
It is significantly lower, but I'm careful now. My memory is not that good, so I'm not exactly sure. But this is one of the best quality reserves. It's a very large reserve, and it is it's relatively easily mineable, very close to the technology that we know.
I see that you might even go underground. Now, that's an interesting one, that a manganese mine, to mine it underground, it's going to have to be very, very rich, given the economics.
There are some of those Kalahari field manganese mines that are mining underground already. And in the next couple of years, that's one of the other things that the team was very excited about, is many of the existing open pit players will be reaching the end of their open pit life in the next 5 to 10 years, which will then just enhance our cost.
How do you pronounce it? You spell it Gravenhage, which sounds
Yes.
A little bit macabre, being a grave. But where does the name come from, and how do you actually pronounce it properly?
It's a Dutch word, Gravenhage. And I'm not sure what hage means, but graven is a spade. So
Okay.
It's got something to do with digging in the ground there.
Indeed.
But
Magnus,
it's a Dutch name, Gravenhage.
Gravenhage. Well, we will call it by its correct name. Gravenhage for 700 million, roughly 50 kilometers north of Hot as Hell. Magnus, Hot, well, I don't know how other people pronounce Hot as Hell, or I suppose Hot Azel, but there's warm daar so.
Must be very hot, and I see it's close to a town called Avontuur, so it could be an adventure for Andries in many respects, He can also one day write his book, and then they fired me, but that title has already been taken by Yanni Mouton, so he'll have to come up with something else, like they dug my grave or something.
How I was fired and rehired, or something along those lines. It's an interesting personal journey to go through when you're fired by a company and then merge with them thereafter. You said it was difficult. Have those guys stuck around? Are you still partners today?
Yeah. Yeah, they are. They are. Unfortunately, there were 3 shareholders. Unfortunately, one of them passed away. He had cancer. The other 2 are still significant shareholders in our business.
And actively involved?
No, not anymore. They both are retired now. The one was still actively, was actually on our board for a while, until I think he turned 70, and then he decided to go farming full time.
And I'm sure they are thanking their lucky stars that they did get back together with you, given the wealth that you've created for them too. But Andries, before we let you go, this super cycle that so many people are talking about, there are really 2 parts to it. Is manganese one of the minerals that is in high demand now, given the move that we're seeing away from dirty energy, if you like? And then secondly, and more broadly, do you buy the super cycle argument?
I think the second part first. I definitely do buy the super cycle argument. How long it's going to last, that I think that I'll leave to Magnus to to speculate on that. I'm absolutely not qualified. I said we had a board meeting today because we're going to publish our results tomorrow morning, and I said to the board, we've got the super cycle. It's probably at least going to last another day, but it could last another year or 2. So I really don't know. The manganese seems to not have been benefiting so much. The price is a little lower than one would expect, and it is one of the reasons is that the South African producers, there were quite a number of new producers that entered the market, and the market is starting to stabilize now. So it's not as good as iron ore, but we have seen it better in the past. We think there's a lot of demand ahead, especially given that it can also be used for batteries. It gets used for many other uses other than only the ferrous market.
So you are exposed then to the new wave?
We are.
Good news indeed. Magnus, you want to pose a question, or shall we let Andries go?
No, that's great. Good. All the best, Andries, with your wife and COVID. I mean, it seems to be there is a 3rd wave. You're picking it up from everybody. So all the best there. Look after your health.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're listening to the BizNews Power Hour, brought to you by the team at biznews.com. Well, I know, Magnus, you've been talking a lot about the JSE not being a great place to invest, but earlier today, Jackie Cameron had a chat with the man behind a Dubai company that wants to list on the JSE and raise 4.5 billion rand. It's what we call a IPO, or initial public offering, the biggest to happen on the JSE for quite some time. Let's pick up on this with Jackie. I'd love to get your comments afterwards, Magnus.
The pool of stocks available for investment has been steadily shrinking over the past decade, with companies complaining about red tape, costs, and illiquidity in Johannesburg. A Dubai-based education company is bucking this trend. Joining me, Jackie Cameron, for BizNews. On the line now from the UAE is Mr. Radhakrishnan Nair, CEO of Athena Education, to talk about why his company is seeking a listing on the JSE. Many South African businesses have been exiting the JSE, but your company wants to raise capital through a JSE listing. Why the JSE of all the markets in the world?
First of all, South Africa and UAE are not distant to each other in terms of the familiarity of the 2 markets. The relationship between the 2 countries has been very warm and strong from an economic focus perspective for more than 20-25 years now. South African companies do business here. There are more than 100 South African companies who have their operations. There are many more who have their representative officers who work here. Many South African brands are like household names in the UAE. Mediclinics, Nando's, Standard Bank, South African Airways, all of them.
Hello,
The
Marius.
trade volume between the two countries is over 45 billion rand. More than 100,000 South African people live here in Dubai and work here. So from that perspective, we are not foreigners to each other, number one. But that's from a very macro perspective. Coming to Athena specifically, Athena is one of the prominent education private school cattle operator in the UAE, who has been in the business for the last 5 years. There is a very focused approach to expanding our footprint into other Emirates in the UAE, in other Gulf Cooperation countries, and certain select countries in Africa and Asia, including South Africa. There is a growth story, and it's an opportunity for Athena to raise capital for its expansion program, and it's an opportunity for the investor community in South Africa to participate in Athena's growth story.
How did you narrow your choices to the JSE?
One of the main reasons is the familiarity of South Africans investor community, companies who have listed in JSE, who are in K-12 education business, kindergarten to grade 12. There have been a few success stories of K-12 education businesses on the JSE, listed in JSE. So from that perspective, the market is very familiar with what success can be achieved in this segment.
Mr. Radhakrishnan Nair, who is the chief executive of Athena, now Magnus. Okay, I've listened to that clip, and the whole interview is on BizNews Radio. So you can go onto BizNews Radio, go and listen to it, and it still baffles me. Why would a Dubai company that started 5 years ago in education come to the JSE and think that it could raise 4.5 billion rand from South African investors? It baffles me.
It's a tall order, Alec. Obviously, we haven't seen the prospectus and looked at it in greater detail, but as I was listening, I had the same thoughts. It's a new company. It's coming to a market where it's well provided and stocked with private educational companies, Kuro and all the others on our market. So it's already perhaps an overtraded market for various reasons. And to look for that amount of capital in this climate in South Africa is going to be very difficult, I would suggest. But if they come with a compelling story, they might find some local fund managers who will take up some shares. Even the public will take up some shares. But it does sound like a story one has to watch and see how it unfolds in the next couple of weeks and months. But 4.5 billion in this market, in education in particularly, with the very depressed private financial status of many parents. There's already been a downscaling of schools. We hear reports that parents can't pay their school fees, ranging from the top and the most expensive ones to even middle-class schools. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they succeed. I sincerely hope they do. I'm not anti-JSE. It's just, reporting on something that is happening and having a view negatively or positive is two different things. So yeah, we do need listings to get some excitement going in our local market. Perhaps this is it, but we'll have to wait and see.
But I would love to know if you brought a business that was 5 years old, based in a foreign country, in a field that, Kuro and Advotech haven't really shot the lights out of in recent times. And you went to institutional investors and you said, I want 4.5 billion rand, whether they'd be opening their wallets. Maybe there's something more to this. The whole thing to me it doesn't add up. And I can't understand the logic, A, of coming to the JSE with a Dubai company, and B, being able to tap into South African financial institutions. Or maybe there are other people, maybe there are people who live in Dubai who've got investments in this country who want to support it.
It's a tall order. I mean, we've got two very good operators and their share price hasn't done much. So against that background, I might have to agree with you, Alec.
Anyway, we will be finding out more about that, and it's coming to the JSE in the near future. One of the biggest listings on the market in quite some time. You can listen to the whole interview and make up your own mind by going on to biznewsradio.com, and you'll find out more there on from Jackie Cameron's interview with Mr. Radhakrishnan Nair, the CEO of Athena. Marius Reitz joins us now. He is our go-to man when it comes to stories about cryptocurrencies, and we're going to be talking to him just after the market report. But Marius, there's been a huge volatility in cryptos in the last couple of weeks. You can tell us a little later why. But last time we had you on this program, you were saying that the market was very much in the greed factor. Have we now switched cryptos into the fear area?
Yeah, absolutely, Alec. I think the Bitcoin price is notoriously volatile. We've had a good run for the last year, but the market cooled down recently, and we've seen 15 of these ups and downs over the last decade or so. So the market's definitely in the fear section, currently. So we'll have to see how this plays out.
I guess the story there, we'll be talking to Marius just after Nadia has brought us up to date on the market report. But the story there is that you should be selling when everybody else is greedy and buying when everybody else is fearful. We'll find out from Marius and Magnus whether it indeed is an opportunity to be buying into cryptos. But it's the top of the hour. It's 6 o'clock, and we have our editor-at-large, Jackie Cameron, and her flash briefing.
Former President Jacob Zuma has finally appeared in court to face corruption, money laundering, and racketeering charges. He pleaded not guilty on all counts. Zuma's lawyer, Dali Mpofu, spent part of the first day of the trial arguing that State Prosecutor Billy Downer should be replaced. He says that Downer is not independent and impartial because he supported an opposition party's bid to ensure that Zuma faced charges. Zuma, aged 79, was fired as deputy president in 2005 after his financial advisor was found guilty of soliciting bribes for him from arms dealers in the 1990s. Later, Zuma led South Africa for almost 9 scandal-marred years before the ruling party forced him to step down in 2018 to stem a loss of electoral support. The number of confirmed COVID-19 infections has risen about 17% in South Africa over the past week. This is the warning from the Department of Health. The hospitalization rate has risen about 12% over the week, while the death rate has climbed by about 30%. Just over 3,000 new infections were reported in the 24 hours until Tuesday, says the Department of Health. South African taxpayers are footing the bill for the country's spy agency to beef up its economic intelligence unit so that it can play a proactive role in supporting the nation's companies as they expand beyond their home base. This is according to State Security Minister Ayanda Dlodlo, who says firms that could benefit from the intelligence operatives' expertise include telecommunications giant MTN and Sasol, the world's largest producer of motor fuel from coal. MTN operates in 21 markets, while Sasol's business spans 30 countries. South Africa's Health Minister Willem Petzer, at the center of a corruption scandal, is facing calls for his resignation. A forensic investigation and a probe by the Special Investigating Unit are underway into a contract worth 150 million rand. Mkhize says the public outrage and anger over the Digital Vibes contract was justified, but he will not be stepping aside. He denies personally benefiting from the contract. And that was your BizNews Flash Briefing. I'm Jackie Cameron for BizNews. For those and the other big stories of the day, visit biznewsradio.com.
Thanks, Jackie. Sure, for what it's worth, I have followed Willem Kiese's career, and he's not a crook. He and his wife, Dr. May, both medical doctors, stay in the same house that they've lived in for something like 30 years, so they certainly aren't flashing around money. And when he says he personally didn't benefit, I believe him. But let's see if the court of public opinion believes him as well. Of course, that's much more important.
BrightRock believes that with every change in life comes opportunity, and the markets aren't any different. The daily movement in the markets mean change for us all, sometimes small, sometimes big. This daily market report is made just for you by BrightRock, the first ever needs-meshed life insurance that changes as your life changes.
And that's your cue, Nadia Swat. How did the markets go today?
Well, the JSE All-Share Index was flat today at 66,108. Mediclinic was up by 5.5% to 63 Rand 70 per share. MTN was up by 3.5% to 16 Rand 90 per share. Karoo was down by 4.5% to 490 Rand per share, and AngloGold Ashanti was down by 4% to 337 Rand per share. In the currency markets, the Rand was stronger against all the major currencies to 13 Rand 76 to the dollar, 19 Rand 44 to the pound, and 16 Rand 81 to the euro. Gold is higher at $1,904 an ounce. Brent crude is steady at $68.83 a barrel. And the premier cryptocurrency will put you back 535,000 Rand a Bitcoin.
535,000 Rand, Nadia. That's a little bit stable for Bitcoin.
It's like steadily unsteady for the last week or so.
Marius Reitz, are you still with us? Marius? Let's see, we have call muted from Marius. So unfortunately, we seem to have lost him, but hopefully he'll be back in a minute. Magnus, from your perspective, just to pick up on those markets, anything there that surprised you? Clearly, with Mediclinic up by 5%, that was due to the results that we saw today, which clearly the market liked.
Despite the fact that they had a big drop in their profits, the market did maybe expect more losses and then started buying. That's the nature of markets. But this Bitcoin story, cryptocurrency story, Alec, is going to be the story of our journalistic careers. I think we're going to end our careers on what's going to happen with Bitcoin. I was reading an article on TrustNet, which is an industry website, and there was an article today by a guy called Barry Norris. I think he's the brother of Chuck Norris, but he's from a fund company called Argonaut in Britain. And he says Bitcoin is the most successful Ponzi scheme of all times. And he just reckons it's a load of rubbish. We all be conned into it. It's got all the characteristics of a Ponzi scheme, and it's all going to go down to zero. Now, of course, I tweeted that, and immediately I was body slammed by the converted. I must be a masochist. I must be loving people smashing me. It was incredible how people reacted and says, "You're an old toppy, retire. You don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
But it's a compelling argument. I'll send it to you. It makes for good a debate. Maybe get him on the line and get someone from Bitcoin to defend. Fantastic debate. But I just thought.
Nuru Rabini, one of the great economists, the man who's known as Dr. Doom, one of the very few who called the 2008 collapse, he also has sharp things to say about Bitcoin. But Marius Reitz is with us. He's with Luno. Marius, I know that we've been struggling with our comms with you, so you wouldn't have heard what Magnus said. But Chuck Norris's brother has written a piece saying that Bitcoin is a big Ponzi scheme. I guess you've got to come back with a response to that, Marius.
Yeah, thanks, Alec. I think over the last week, people like Ray Dalio came out saying that he owns Bitcoin, saying that he'd rather own Bitcoin than owning a bond. And some JP Morgan analysts also recommended Coinbase, which is the first publicly traded crypto company, as a buy. So, no, you definitely have contradicting views. I definitely think some investors, some institutional investors, take a long-term view of the market. They think that Bitcoin transactions will become more integrated with the financial system in future, and not now, in the next 5, 10, 20 years. So it's a long-term bet. They attach a dollar price to it, and they take up a small position. So you'll have different views. Short-term investors are speculators. They take bets that the price will go up and down in the short run, and it's mainly the short-term investors, the retail investors, the DIY investors that led the Bitcoin sell-off over the last 2 weeks or so. So, yeah.
Our market reporter, Nadia Swart, my colleague, is of the generation that loves Bitcoin. Are you
No,
a Bitcoin owner,
no.
Nadia?
I'm not. And I was actually regretting it for a while, but lately I think I made the wrong choice to just rather stay away.
So the FOMO never really grabbed you?
No, luckily not. Never been one prone to FOMO.
Well, we pick up with Nadia every evening at this time. She brings us up to date on the markets. But Marius, why has Bitcoin taken such a knock? From where you're sitting, clearly you don't want to see extreme volatility. Last time you told us it was greed. Now you're telling us it's fear. Has it got anything to do with the fact that the Chinese have now aimed all their guns on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and they said they're not going to allow them in China, and the United States says they're going to have their own Bitcoin, in other words, the Fed coin, which will be a cryptocurrency worth just what $1 is. Has that's emboldened clearly Chuck Norris's brother, but has that been a reason why others have been selling off?
Alec, yeah, I think China was that's old news. Not sure if you get something like old news, but China was old news. That's a 2017 announcement that resurfaced this week or last week on Reuters and CNN and all the major media outlets. But I think if we look at the factors that impact the Bitcoin price, it's very much the same factors that would impact traditional assets. So regulatory central bank decisions or updates, trade wars, public commentary by influencers such as Elon Musk. I think if we look at the Bitcoin market, it's roughly 6% of the size of the gold market. So when these things happen, for example, Elon Musk tweets something, or there's an article around China banning crypto, which, by the way, they didn't ban crypto, they just banned financial institutions from processing crypto transactions, then there's quite an impact on the market because it's much, much smaller. And because you have these DIY retail investors, they do desktop research, they react to social sentiment. And when the price pulls back, they think the price will pull back even further, and they sell. And that led to a retail sell-off over the last week or so. From an institutional perspective, Tesla said that they're holding on to their $1.5 billion. That's probably, I'm not sure if it's worth more or less at this point. Bitcoin is still up 34% year to date. And we also saw MicroStrategy buying $10 million of additional Bitcoin. So got these institutions saying, okay, we're holding on. We've got the retail buyers with fear and fight, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They're selling off. But as you said in the intro, the market has over the last week stabilized slightly. So not sure what's next from here. No, it was mainly retail lead sell-off, Alex.
Do you have a fair value there at Luno? This is your game. Do you have a fair value for Bitcoin? It's around, as we heard, about $35,000 today.
We actually don't really actually look at the price even. We don't sit with screens and monitor the price. We building a company or a platform that's independent of the Bitcoin price because we think that Bitcoin will play an important role in the future of money. And not in the next year or so, but it will become increasingly integrated and be used for transactions in future. But having said that, Bitcoin is currently in an asset phase. So that's why you have this flood of people with FOMO entering the market, wanting to buy Bitcoin as a store of value. And once we reach a stage where people can derive more utility from Bitcoin, using Bitcoin for transactions, especially remittances and cross-border payments, where Bitcoin's decentralization will play a very important role in driving down the cost of transactions. I think once we reach that stage, where there's a critical mass of people buying and selling Bitcoin, and there's network effects from Bitcoin's use as a payment method, I think then we'll be able to get a clearer picture of, or we'll be able to attach a number. But at this point, it's so early on. There's lots of speculation around valuations, people comparing Bitcoin to gold, and saying $500,000. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to say.
$500,000 is just a conservative estimate in some people's opinion. I've heard numbers of $1 million upwards. Well, it's a long way from there, 35,000, and it certainly has come down a lot recently. We'll be following the Bitcoin story as we go along.
This market report was made just for you by BrightRock, the first ever needs-matched life insurance that changes as your life changes.
Okay, Magnus, I didn't want to bring you in because I think that had you had a swing at Marius, he might never ever have come back again. So let's rather leave the Bitcoin Ponzi scheme story to the one side and concentrate on, I suppose some people could say governments are Ponzi schemes because you vote for a government every 5 years. They then get into power. They then make a decision what to do with your money and often waste it. And it's not just our government, although our guys are right up there with the best in the world at wasting money, as we know, or stealing money. But it really is a strange system if you think about it in rational terms.
Well, one of the most popular themes I would imagine in South African society is sitting around a braai or a dinner table is to talk about tax and a tax revolt and the amount of taxes that we pay and the wastage in the taxes once it's been paid. I mean, there's an anger that's been building up over many, many years about this, and it's aimed at the ANC and the way they govern and the way, I mean, the assets. I mean, and I think that Willem Petzer has just touched on a raw nerve and started channeling this energy into a way for people to express their anger some way or the other, so that government can at least take notice. So I think it's a great initiative, and I'm most certainly going to support him, and I hope other people will do as well.
Well, Willem is in our virtual studio. Good to see you, Willem. Magnus retweeted a tweet about the Taxpayers Union of South Africa in your video, and he said he was flamed. He was, what did you call it, Magnus? Body checked?
Well, one guy called me, it was and I can't express the word, but it's a short Afrikaans word. It starts with a K and ends with a K. And he said, you are talking rubbish. I mean, that's what people, when you disagree, I mean, they have a go at you. So I'm used to it. But Willem, the tweet of Alec that I retweeted, I see has now been loved by 359 people. That's a lot of people who like what you're saying.
Mm. Yeah, well, when I released that video on Facebook and on Twitter from my side, it was already loved by thousands of people. I think it's probably one of the best responses that I've ever gotten from a video that I've released from my side.
Well, when I looked this morning, there were more than 50,000 people who had watched it. So clearly, as Magnus says, you've hit a raw nerve. I haven't seen it much in the media, so no one seems to have picked it up outside of your own YouTube grouping or your own social unit. Who are the people who, in other words, your inner circle or the close people who'd be following every move? Because clearly, if this starts going viral, you'll have a multiple of that. But who are the first adopters of the Willem Petzer ideas?
Well, I would say probably the people who've been following me for the last 5 years. The video was actually viewed just over 50,000 times on YouTube, but on Facebook it was already viewed over 180,000 times. So we're looking at about 250,000 people who viewed the video. And we just got over, let me just quickly check. I can actually check for you on my website right now. Mm-hmm. Just over 12,800 people who signed up to become members of the Taxpayers Union, which I would say is a very, very good start. I mean, we're not even a week old, we're 4 days old right now. It's a very good start, but we're aiming to get 1.5 million people. But the guys who I think signed up first are the guys who have been following me all these years and who have a bit of a how shall I put it, faith in the work that I'm doing.
The last time we spoke, we did an interview for BizNews and you told us your story. It was fascinating. I got a number of very critical emails. It seems as though not everybody is a fan.
Well, do you know what really irritates me, Alec, is there was an article written about me, and this is probably the only negative article ever written about me in The Citizen by a guy called Daniel Friedman. And he posted a Photoshop tweet in which I apparently said that I am the most racist, Islamophobic, anti-feminist, whatever, anti-gay person you'll ever meet or something like that. But the tweet's clearly Photoshopped. And then he posted a bunch of memes that people have put in some comments or some forum. And we actually had a 2-year court, or not court case, but we had a case against the Citizen, and eventually an independent labor lawyer ruled in our favor, and the Citizen had to fire Friedman for his unethical journalism, for basically spreading these lies about me. But what irritates me about this is the fact that the article is still online, and for some reason the Citizen never took it off. And now whenever people want to, say something critical about me, they share this article, even though the truth is the journalist was already fired for it.
That's so interesting. I had during the Gupta era, one of the Gupta dark media players created a Twitter account with Alec Hogg, ALLEC Hogg, and they used that to fool somebody to have a conversation with me, which obviously I had nothing to do with, where I was also made out to be this kind of a person. Thankfully, and it was retweeted by some very big names on Twitter. And thankfully, I got hold of the people immediately and said, look, this is not true. You can see I had nothing to do with this. But the person on the other end of the direct message really had very little ability. Now, fortunately, that's all been taken off. But I can imagine if that kind of fake news were to remain, some people would see it and believe it. But putting that one side, what you're doing now has clearly got lots of fans. Magnus is very supportive, and his voice speaks very loudly in South Africa. What exactly are you hoping that the Taxpayers Union is going to achieve, and why should people join it?
Well, to put it to you in very simple terms, Alec, we are a union, and if you compare us to your traditional trade unions, the trade union is set up to give an individual worker or individual workers the power in order to take on a powerful corporation. In other words, it restores the balance of power between the worker and the corporation. But what we as a taxpayers union do is we take that model and we create a union for the taxpayers in South Africa to restore the balance of power between the state and the taxpayer. If we look at what happened in South Africa for the past 25 years, is the ANC did whatever they wanted to do. There was tons of corruption, mismanagement, and just pure incompetence going on every level of government. But for some reason, the taxpayer never really took a strong enough stance against this to stop it. And I want to actually compare this to the taxi union during COVID. So during COVID, what did we as the taxpayer, or we as the normal middle class citizens do? Basically, there was one action being taken by Reino de Beer from the Liberty Fighters Alliance, and he took the government to court, and he won in the Constitutional Court, declaring the entire lockdown unconstitutional. So what happened after that? The ANC just ignored all of this. They completely ignored what the Constitutional Court said, and they just went on doing exactly what they wanted to do. Now, compare that to the taxi unions. When the government told the taxi unions they need to operate at half capacity, what the taxi unions did is they just flat out said no, and they went on with the way that they've always been carrying on. And they have the power to do so because the government know they can't pick a fight with the taxi unions. But the government can continue to destroy businesses and to steal money and buy themselves these massive Mercedes G-Class vehicles and give these big contracts to their family members and friends that they never realize, and then the money just gets lost. All of these things can happen, and the taxpayer can be punished, and the state have the they do it because they know that there's not going to be too much of a pushback. So what the Taxpayers Union of South Africa aims to do is to change all of that and restore the balance of power towards the taxpayer and give the taxpayer more of a say in the way that their money are being spent. Now, if you look at my video, it's about 20 minutes long where I explained more of the plan. And then also today, I had an interview with Ramon Cabernac on his YouTube channel called Morning Shots, which was about an hour long where I explained the whole process. but I don't know if we've got time on this channel now to go through the whole process
I-
and how everything will work.
I think you've given us good steers. We can Google, go and watch Roman's interview and watch it on YouTube as well. But Magnus, I know you are dying to have at least a question or two for Willem.
Yes, indeed. Willem, you said in your YouTube message that you're trying to reach 1.5 million people. Is there a reason for that target?
Well, the simple reason is because we want to put a big target out there. As they say, aim for the moon, and then you'll even if you miss, you'll land up amongst the stars. That's one of the things, and then the other reason is because that'll be more than half of the current income taxpayers. If you look at 5.8%, which was reported last of 60 million people. So yeah, that's why we came up with a number. The number doesn't mean that much. Our legal expert Johan Oosthuizen, he's actually a fiduciary practitioner of South Africa. Him and I had this conversation, and we asked what do we need to get the locus standi, or to get the legal standing in the Supreme Court and in the Constitutional Court, to be able to say that we represent the taxpayer of South Africa. And then he basically said, because it has never been done before, there's not a set number. But having 10%, maybe 150,000 taxpayers will be a very good start. And it should give us locus standi, and we are well on our way to 150,000 people. I mean, as I said, over 12,000 people already after 4 days after the release. And we haven't even really started marketing this thing. I've just released a long video explaining the whole thing. Once I release a short video that can be more easily shared and be watched by people who don't, have the interest in watching a 20-minute video about politics and these things, then we'll reach a far greater audience. So yes, I'm very confident we'll reach a number like over 100,000 within the next few weeks easily.
Willem, your enemies are going to say that this is angry whites, and angry whites or whites only 8% of South African population. Why are they causing such a lot of trouble? Are you able to counter that?
Well, to be honest with you, Alec, I am just so tired of hearing about white this and black that all the time. I mean, whenever you want to try achieve something positive in South Africa, whenever you want to bring positive change to this country, the first thing the ANC and their supporters do is they accuse you of being a white racist. And I mean, if you look at the history of Zimbabwe, for example, and if you talk to some of the more educated Zimbabweans, the more successful Zimbabweans all over the world, and you ask them about Mugabe, they will always say, he completely messed up this country, but at least, he got rid of the white people. And this is probably the worst mentality that you can have in a country like Zimbabwe or South Africa, where you are, so focused on race and so, I want to call it proud. You've got so much pride in your own race that you're unwilling to accept any failures by anyone by your race. And even though all the evidence suggests otherwise, and all the evidence suggests that there's a bunch of thieves stealing your money, you'll still, try and to blame it on white people and make it a white versus black case. But to give you a short answer to your question, what we're going to do in respond with this, at the Taxpayers Union of South Africa, we're not going to mention black, we're not going to mention white, we're not going to mention black ANC or black government or black country or black anything. We're just going to focus on corruption, incompetence, and mismanagement of money. On our front page of our website, we say we are a non-political and non-ideological, non-affiliated organization. We're not going to take any sides, whether that be on the racial nationalist debate or on the political debate. We're not going to say we support the DA or the ANC or whatever. We are not going to have any ideological stance saying we are, for example, classical liberals or whatever. We are just going to say the only reason for the existence of the Taxpayers Union of South Africa is to give the taxpayer more money to fight corruption, fight mismanagement, and fight incompetence on government level and give the taxpayer more power to do with their money as they please. So yes, that's basically how we're going to handle the whole race debate that always rears its ugly head everywhere you go.
It's a very interesting time that we're living in now, where the individuals are being able to be heard, whereas the archaic systems, some of the governance systems, I mentioned this right at the top before you joined us, that we have a political system where you vote every 5 years, usually on the basis of lies and promises that were never kept. And then the people who you do vote for get into a position where they abuse you for 5 years and then lie to you 5 years later. And in that period, there's not a heck of a lot that you can do to make any changes. But a passing shot. We're coming to the end of our show. Magnus, your passing suggestion to Willem or question?
No, I think it's an initiative that we need to support. I mean, for far too long, we've just been very complacent, watching what government does with not only applying the taxes, but also wasting our taxes. And I think that it should be non-racial. It's not a white-black thing. It's where the government is mismanaging our money, which lies at the heart of our country. I mean, we can see the results of the mismanagement in the roads and the water and the sewage, because the money that should have been spent has been dissipated or stolen. So all the power to you, Willem. Good luck.
And if you can make that connection between tax paying or the money that comes out of our pockets as taxpayers and is then used by people in the state, it's not they have no divine right to that money. We are their employers, and I like that part of the rebasing back to where we are as a society, or how democracies work. Willem Petzer, just finally, the website, is it taxpayersunionsouthafrica.co.za?
No, it's taxpayersunion.co.za.
Taxpayers Union.
Union, one word, and .co.za, yes.
Well, I'm sure we are going to be talking with you in time to follow this story. It's not something that's going away, and it is definitely going to be making a few people sit up and take notice. Well, thank you very much for being with us. You can get recordings of this program on biznewsradio.com at 7 and 7. So 7 at night and 7 in the morning, you'll be able to listen to it. And of course, going on to BizNews Radio on Spotify or iTunes, all of the editions of the BizNews Power Hour are available for you. Until tomorrow at 5:30, where indeed we have a very special program for you. We have the Finance Minister of Zimbabwe, who's going to be spending the first half hour with us, telling us whether or not what we're hearing from Zimbabwe, in other words, the Eddie Cross version of the truth there, that cement sales are hitting new records, that the economy is starting to pull up, that inflation is down. We'll hear from Mdluli Ntuli, the Finance Minister, whether indeed this is happening, and is there on our doorstep a little bit of green shoots of hope. But until then, from our team here at BizNews, cheerio.
This market report was made.
You've been listening to the Power Hour, brought to you by the team at BizNews. Right. Well, that's the end of the show for tonight. Thanks for being with us, guys, on YouTube. Lots of comments that are there on the side. I'd really just like in future, if you wouldn't mind, sending through those questions as early as possible. Then I can pick it up before I get caught up in the conversation. But thanks for coming up with us tonight, and look forward to being in your company again tomorrow. I'm sure there are going to be lots of questions then too. Okay, until then.